Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and got a couple of money-related things today that I want to get into. America's money-related things today that I want to get into. But first, I would be remiss if I did not congratulate the freshman congressman, Maxwell Frost, on an absolutely fantastic House Oversight Committee meeting. He was recently in a meeting on the House Oversight Committee's border security meeting. He was recently talking to border security agents and getting to the bottom of exactly whether or not there even is a border crisis, on the collection of GOP lies that have been what they use instead of policy when it comes to talking about these things. He had a refreshingly frank discussion in front of cameras, under pressure, with the microphones on. And you know, not age-related, not because he's 25, but because he's a freshman representative, congressman is what I meant to say. He's a freshman congressman. I am shocked at how well he did. He did better than people that have been there for decades. TYT's Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur are back on What You Can Do. They talked about it, and I liked their take. I have thoughts of my own to add. And then, of course, as always, I have what you can do about it. Let's listen to that.
Would you agree that the narrative being peddled right now that says that an insane amount of fentanyl is being brought into this country by illegal immigrants?
Freshman Democratic Representative Maxwell Frost did an excellent job breaking through some of the myths we've heard from the right wing when it comes to President Joe Biden's policies at our nation's southern border. Now, the answer from the Border Patrol agents is fascinating to say the least. But before we get to that, I just want to say it is shocking that no other Democrat was as effective and concise in asking the kinds of questions that Representative Frost did in the context of this immigration-related hearing on the House floor. With that said, here's how the Border Patrol agents responded.
An insane amount of fentanyl is being brought into this country by illegal immigrants, specifically. Would you say that is true?
Sir, again, we're here to report on the facts on border security. I probably differ from giving an opinion on anything in the news right now.
With the data.
I just want to be clear. That is somebody who's not eager to answer this question. In other words, what you just said is, well, I'm here to talk about other things. I don't want to talk about things that are popular, that America's paying attention to right now. This is supposed to be boring. People aren't supposed to pay attention to this. Come on.
Right.
Because that's probably doubtful. I can't.
Yeah.
Provide
no, all
a
good.
factual
Thank you, Chief.
statement.
No, I appreciate it. I agree, right? It has to be rooted in the data. You know, a Cato Institute report.
Right there, brought it back. He didn't let her get away with just saying, I guess. I'm just looking at the data. He's like, yeah. Let's keep it to that. That's what I'm asking about.
And CBP data shows that more than 85% of the illicit fentanyl entering the United States is brought in by citizens of the United States of America. So, Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record the 2022 Cato Institute report demonstrating that illicit fentanyl is primarily trafficked by U.S. citizens at lawful ports of entry.
Boom. Enter it into the record. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you imagine if every Democrat was that competent? My God. You'd never have another Republican in office ever again.
So that was one myth that was debunked by Representative Frost and by Border Patrol agents who were part of this hearing. But that's not the best part, in my opinion. There was another question that he asked, which we're going to get to in just a moment. Before we do, Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Look, the guy's 26 years old, and I think that's a giant advantage. And that's because he can Google things, and he's not ancient, and he has energy, and he's a progressive.
He's not dead inside.
Right? Yeah, and he can make simple points, which honestly, a giant number of Democrats can't even make the simplest point. They keep just letting the Republicans say that, the illegal immigrants are bringing in fentanyl. Well, it's just not true. Why don't you just tell them the fact? And he did. Well, wasn't that easy? And you know what Republicans have to say about that? Nothing, because they're lying. And when he gives you the data, they run away.
That is a key. Oh, that's a perfect face. We're going to keep it because that's how you should feel. That is a key fact right there that I want to hang on. He didn't just say they're wrong, because when you do that, it leaves it at the viewer, the person watching it at home. Everybody in that room already knew that the GOP lies all the time, including the GOP. But the viewer at home is left with just the opinion of the person I either like or don't like, and their opposite. But when you say, let's enter this data into the record, okay, let's keep it on the data. When you do that, because guess what? The data's on the side of the Democrats. That makes it no longer a matter of debate. That forces them to fight in the battleground where we will always win. We being the American people. That is in the realm of reality.
It's not that hard. Wait till you see the second one.
And by the way, just let me comment on the myth itself, because it shows the lack of seriousness coming from the Republican Party in regard to this very real crisis we're dealing with in this country right now with fentanyl overdoses, okay? Almost 100,000 people died of drug overdoses last year alone, and the majority of those overdoses were caused by synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Okay, if you politicize it and just turn it into an anti-immigration issue, well then you're not actually genuinely concerned about finding solutions to this very real problem.
No, they are not the GOP. They are looking for any opportunity to distract, to get people hopping mad at immigrants. That's what they are looking for.
Now, with that said, this was my favorite part of Frost's line of questioning. Let's watch.
For many folks around the country who might only watch far-right media or just listen to even some of the folks on this committee, I'm curious, Chief Chavez, when President Biden took office, did your agents stop enforcing the border and just allow everybody to come in, thus creating what we hear here is an open border? Did that happen when the president took office?
Sir, thank you for your question. The answer is no, sir.
Okay,
we
thank you.
continue to enforce policy and laws.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Chief Modlin, when President Biden took office, did the border just open and did y'all stop enforcing your policies?
Also, thank you for your question, sir. I can tell you this, the fifth administration I've worked for, starting with the Clinton administration, and Border Patrol agents do their job every day.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Look.
Just to be clear, he's not asking that, well, he is asking that rhetorically. He's not asking that for nothing. That's a talking point of the Republicans. If you haven't heard it, that is something they say. And they have, I gotta name this, they have this technique where they use a tone as though people who are in the know are supposed to realize they're exaggerating to make a point. However, they know damn well that their base does not think they're exaggerating to make a point. And then, so they'll say something along the lines of like, we don't have any Border Patrol agents. Biden got rid of all of them. And then Fox will say the same thing. Or rather, Fox will say, X representative said X, then not fact check it, just present it bare bones. Their audience is left, a significant chunk of this country is then left believing that what happened was Biden took office, and that night, the very evening of January 6th, January 20th, got that on the brain, the very evening of January 20th, all these Border Patrol agents had to pack up their lockers and go home. That's what the Fox audience is left believing. That's what the GOP base is left believing. So it becomes necessary for a person like this, who understands that that is what's happening, to have these people say, for the record, in front of cameras, is that what happened? No? Okay, thank you for putting that on the record so we can refer to that over and over, so we can call the GOP liars, because now they should know that they are lying. They don't have an excuse at this point. We already knew they were lying. They already knew they were lying. But now we can hold this up and say, look, there's no excuse. Now we can prove that they know they're lying. Makes a huge difference.
As y'all probably realized by now, a lot of these hearings are not really about solutions. They're about politics. And for me, I believe solutions must be rooted in facts.
I loved that last statement. It's not rooted in facts. It's not rooted in policy solutions. It's just politics. And it's so important to drive that point home, because the reason why we don't have solutions to the immigration issue is because Congress hasn't passed legislation to address it. So it's real easy for Republicans to complain about what's happening on the southern border, but are they working on legislation to do anything about it? Is there any reform that they're willing to work on? No. They just want to politicize it for their own personal electoral gain.
And because that allows them to look like they're working. All they have to do, all they really came there to do, is pass massive tax cuts for the rich and then to sell out government contracts to friends of theirs to enrich themselves. That's what they're there to do. But if that's all they actually physically did, you could track it too easily. There wouldn't be a scapegoat. There wouldn't be a windmill for them to tilt at. So they got to pick somebody and bully them. And the easiest people to pick, immigrants, sure. Gay people, sure. Minorities of all sorts.
So I want to suggest what they can do in a second. But first, the most important thing here is, look at how simple that was, guys. We've been waiting like 20, 40 years for a Democrat to make the most obvious points in the world. Guys, hey, Custom Border Patrol,
life.
Is the border actually open? No. It's just a total myth that they made up. How easy was that? That was so easy. We totally, and we say it on the Young Turks all the time. We give constructive solutions, and we say, hey, why don't the Democrats say that there is no open border, that of course the law is still in effect, and that every Republican that says open border is a liar? Why don't they just say these obvious things? And then like reporters and pundits will be like, no, the sophisticated thing to do is to not fight back. That's fourth dimensional chess. You just like lie down and let them run over you, and that's super sophisticated.
I hate how true that is. I hate how true that is. But it is very much true. The cowardly path has been relabeled as the polite path. Have you noticed that? So often, cowards like to frame cowardly decisions or lazy decisions or any decision that doesn't require they actually get into conflict with somebody as just being well-mannered. That's the Democrat way.
No, it's not sophisticated. You're supposed to actually say the truth. Ask them obvious, easy questions. So great job by Maxwell Frost. Please elect younger people. Like the older generation of Democrats don't know how to fight, don't want to fight, love Republicans, don't like their base. Get them out of the goddamn way. Get some new blood in there, make sure they're progressive, and look at the difference that makes.
Look, I don't know how much age really makes a difference, okay? Like, let's not be unfair to some of the great moments that older Democrats had during similar hearings. Maybe not on immigration, but with members of the financial sector. Katie Porter does a great job in fighting back.
Katie Porter's like 40 years younger than the average Democrat.
Okay, but okay, that's fair if you're going to put it in that context. But she's not considered a spring chicken. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
John
he's 26. That's incredibly young. I get it, right? And she's
Sanders.
a normal mom, right? But number one, she's definitely on the younger side. But guys, I mention age because I think of like Dianne Feinstein and Steny Hoyer and Schumer and Pelosi.
No, they need to step.
Okay. So TYT goes on and does, I mean, it's a 11-minute long video. There's a link in the description. excellent analysis across the board. I wanted to share that initial bit with you. I do want to chime in with one thing, because I'm halfway between Anna and Jank on this one. I think Jank arrives at the right place for the wrong reasons. We need new Democrats in there. Age is a correlation, but not the cause. The Democrats of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, with the exception of Bernie Sanders, who came into office in 1991, I believe, on the national level. With the exception of Bernie Sanders, they are pretty much unanimously of the belief that their class is the political class, and everybody else is different. That's simple. That there should be a political class. They don't come out and say it like this, but they're essentially industry insiders, and they believe in working with Republicans or sacrificing this to appease that, and playing towards the center. Since the 90s, since the early 90s, when Bernie Sanders came into the national scene, we've had the party of what is essentially Newt Gingrich, meaning the Republicans have been going farther and farther right. And because Democrats play to the center, because they do that, America then has gone farther and farther right. It's not an age issue. It comes down to this quite simply. The people who have been in office for years and years and years and years and years have been separated from their constituents for too long. I promise you, John Fetterman knows how to write an email. I promise you, Katie Porter knows how to write an email. Just like I promise you that Nancy Pelosi does not. Being facetious. But the point is not their age. You have more young people who understand how this country works, who experienced the outcomes that this sort of politics has produced over the last 30, 40, 50 years. But that doesn't mean that the fact that they are young is the cause of it. It means they haven't been career politicians. And if it's not necessarily in and of itself wrong to be a career politician, it's just that those that have been career politicians have been politicians in a poisonous system. They learned how to operate in a poisonous system, and most importantly, they've had cushy jobs that are largely insulated from the consequences of their decisions for too long. Whereas John Fetterman was quite recently not a politician. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, quite recently, not a politician. Pramila Jayapal, not a politician. Doesn't mean being a politician's bad, but it does mean that in America, politicians are separated from the consequences of their actions. We should, after we deal with the insanity that is MAGA, after we have won that victory, put a big old pin in this, because we have to come back to it, and we have to make an America where politicians are forced to live as their constituents. There's a number of laws we could do to make that happen. Simple things like saying you have to physically walk through the area you govern, or you have to navigate through physically, get your body through the area you govern, using only your feet or wheelchair or whatever, and public transportation. And if you find that you're unable to do that, well, gosh, now we know how it is to live in the area you govern. So maybe you should attend to that. Max Frost is new. Max Frost has been watching the same programs you and I have. Yes, he was an organizer before he was a politician. was elected when he was 25. He's 26 now. He hadn't had time to get corrupted yet. He hasn't had time to forget what that's like yet. So he's asking those questions that have been eating at him as he's watched other politicians fail. And I'm delighted to see it. We do need to get, as I say, I agree with Cenk's conclusion, just not how he got there. We do need to get a new crop of Democrats in power. People who have recently lived with the consequences of the old way of governing, which simply does not work. Comes down to voting in primaries, folks. That's it. Vote in primaries. Get the leftist people you can competing in the general election. Out with the bad, in with the good. What can you do? Well, aside from voting in primaries, and I would recommend personally signing up for the Democratic Socialists. Aside from that, you can tell Representative Frost he did a hell of a good job. Contact link is in the description. You can click on his contact page, fill out your address, yada yada. Fill it in with ones and zeros if you truly prefer. But the point is, tell him you're an American citizen. You saw him representing, I think it's the 10th district of Florida, but whatever. You saw him representing his district in Florida, and you thought he did a great job. Because I saw a post about him on Twitter, and it was filled to the brim with right-wing hate. Illogical, irrational, etc., etc., etc. Standard right-wing fare. Don't let that be the only thing he hears about the job he did. I mean, I assume he watches this channel. Great job, Max. But assuming he happens to not catch this episode, let him know. If you think he did a good job, let him know. Speaking of great progressives, Nina Turner, former state senator from Ohio, has a show now on TYT called Unbossed. Every time I've had a look at it, it has been both really good and about something I've recently talked about. So I haven't had the opportunity to feature her yet. I'm delighted that I can right now. But first, we got to define a term. It's dark money. Let's pull this up right now. Yeah, dark money. It refers to spending meant to influence political outcomes where the source of the money is not disclosed. In other words, somebody paid for a politician, their ads, their whatever. They funded a politician, but the voter doesn't get to know who that is. There's the explanation. Politically active nonprofits such as 501c4s are generally under no legal obligation to disclose their donors, even if they spend to influence elections. When they choose not to reveal their sources of funding, they are considered dark money groups. Aha! But when does it come to the actual donating? Well, opaque nonprofits and shell companies may give unlimited amounts of money to super PACs. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, if you're familiar with our Big Money Out of Politics stream, super PACs are one of the things we have to get rid of for America to become a genuine, true democracy. While super PACs are legally required to disclose their donors, some of these groups are effectively dark money outlets when the bulk of their funding cannot be traced back to the original donor. In other words, it's illegal for super PACs to not disclose who gave them money. But if a nonprofit collects money from all sorts of places, they can give them money, and the super PAC only has to list that the nonprofit gave them money. Well, Jake, you might say, couldn't you just call yourself a 501c4 and then give money to a super PAC? You sure could. You surely could. That is the reality we're dealing with. Here's the consequence. Nina Turner unbossed.
Let us remind you, though, the troubles that dark money has caused. Again, this is not new, what Dan and I are talking to you about today. Let's put up the Intercept headline. Rep. Henry Kolar gets boost from dark money group launched by his close aide. The Voter Education Foundation, linked to abortion ban advocates, sponsor ads against the conservative Democrats' primary challenger, and that was Jessica Cisneros. Those of you who are in Texas and those of you who may remember this race, we know that these groups weighed in on that. Jessica had a very good chance to win until that dark money started pouring in. And then you guys may remember this. I know I do. Ohio's 11th congressional district, and we're talking about the Ohio underscored, bolded, underlined it. 11th congressional district race turns negative in final days as outside money ramps up. No one is left scathed. Very few people, especially those of us who are progressive freedom fighters, they come in after us. And it's really ironic how the Democrats come harder at progressive Democrats than they do even against Republicans. Dan, any thoughts about that? What happened to Jessica? Not just Jessica, me and others, and how this dark money really does take away. My primary concern here is that the voice of the people in those communities, that voice is taken away by outside people coming in here who really don't care about the troubles that those communities or the needs that those communities may have.
First of all, in response, Bill P., I watched that questioning live. Biden never stopped enforcing Title 42. The courts ordered the administration to continue enforcement. Woof. Yeah, unfortunately. You're quite correct. David Taylor, isn't Max Frost the guy in the Christmas song that's always nipping at your nose? Yeah, but he decided to start over, sort of reinvent himself, and he then, of course, started politics. No, he's a freshman congressman from Florida. Real Bill P says the Dems need more. Jamie Raskin was kind. Katie Porter's and Gavin. Oh, I see. The Dems need more Jamie Raskins, Katie Porter's, and Gavin Newsom's. Yes, Bill, you're 100% right. They really do. And my gosh, if only so that Jamie Raskin doesn't feel like the whole world is on his shoulders. He's up there with Biden in terms of personal tragedies endured in his life, and it breaks my heart to see him have to keep fighting the good fight under those under the personal circumstances he's had to endure. What was Nina Turner saying just then? So, when she says the voice of the people is taken away, imagine these are representatives that are being essentially bribed with dark money. So you've got a representative is only representing a district. Think about how big your district is. That is one representative going to Washington. It's a collection of towns. It's not a massive area. So if you have two candidates running in a primary, one is a corporate Democrat. They'll take money from big oil. They'll take money from the gun manufacturers, whatever. They don't care. They'll take it from anywhere. And they'll make sure their donors are happy. Then you got another potential representative. They only take small dollar donations. In fact, they've never even had the opportunity to take large dollar donations because this one said they're going to do gun reform. They're going to focus on green energy. No billionaire is a fan of this one because they said they're going to tax the rich. Well, they get in their district 1,000 people donating, and everybody donates $5. Hey, that's $5,000. Neat. This person gets one person donating. It's dark money. You don't know where it came from. And they got $500,000 donated to them. Off the charts TV buys. Every local news station's running ads for this person, not this person. This person's got to use their $5,000 to pay a couple of canvassers to buy lunch for the staff that spent all night making phone calls. That's the kind of odds that decent politicians are up against. If you want to legislate against some of these monstrous corporations, that's the kind of odds that are up against. And as Nina Turner is saying here, it takes away the voice of the people. Your political donation matters much less in the face of those kinds of odds. By the way, these people are donating to races like this. What do we have? There's $4.9 billion spent on lobbyists alone, not total on election campaigning, yada, 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 on lobbyists alone last year, if I remember. Well, no, in 2021, if I'm remembering correctly. $4.9 billion. Do you think these are bad businessmen? Do you think these people casually spend $4.9 billion on lobbyists? No. They're getting a return on their profit. And they're investing more every year. Ladies and gentlemen, that is called an oligarchy. That is when we are ruled by the rich. And I hate to tell you this, we're living in it. There is the illusion of choice when that happens. The only answer is to get a huge chunk of the population to be politically active, to be aware. Because in this case, knowledge genuinely is power. Good news is we're making strides. More and more progressives are arriving in politics because more and more people have noticed that something's wrong with America. And unfortunately, a good chunk of them have decided it must be the Jews, and they become MAGA. The rest, though, you folks, who, by the way, I encourage to run for office if you want to do the ultimate what you can do. That's what you can't do. I'm too weird. You probably could do it, though. A huge chunk of people are becoming progressives because we both see the same problem. We are ruled by the rich, and it is not a true democracy as long as that is so. Let's listen to what the commentator has to say here.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes it's acting in bad faith. I mean, we all know what certain like major dark money groups said about you in bad faith. And I had the pleasure of speaking about to Jessica Cisneros as well about how, yeah, that was her second time running. She had really built a great ground game when there was like, she was running at that point, but you had the issue where, yeah, Henry Cuellar came in and he had his big Democratic Party donors who were behind him. And with that infrastructure, it has exactly what you're saying. It has that effect where the regular people, the voters, the person whose like door you're knocking on, my old favorite pre-COVID favorite part of politics is just canvassing and talking to people who may have R's by their name, and by the end of that conversation, they're a D. That's great stuff. That's real politics. This money wipes that out. This money cancels out those people's voices, and that's the most infuriating thing because when you do canvass, there is so much that we can do together. You really see that opportunity, and then big money comes in, and it's back to politics as usual.
Yeah, it definitely manipulates and taints the entire process by, taking over airwaves with negativity and stuff that really has no bearing directly on the needs of the people. I know in the 11th congressional district, having 50% of our children living in poverty, the need for universal health care as we need all across this country, jobs, all of that stuff got drowned out by these dark money groups who wanted to be able to own, because that's what this comes down to. They want to be able to own the people who get these seats. And it's very unfortunate, especially in a primary. And the cherry on the top, Democrats love to use hot issues to make a quick buck, but then don't do anything about those issues. So this headline.
This hurts. It hurts. But it's quite true. If you want to know why your old pal Jake gets so angry at corporate Democrats, it is because they make it difficult to make a distinction between genuine leftists and right-wingers. Case in point, what Nina's about to go into. I'll let her talk. She's going to do better than me.
Democrats use abortion rights to fundraise, but don't fight to protect those rights. Some of us are old enough to remember all that fundraising that went on once the Supreme Court took away Roe v. Wade. And in Texas in particular, there was an opportunity to have a pro-choice candidate win in Jessica, but instead leaders like Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn and others sided with Cuellar against this young woman, and on top of that, then had the nerve to fundraise with their folks about Roe v. Wade. The irony.
Why did they do that? Why would the corporate Democrats not want somebody who is going to fight so hard for abortion rights? Because that person comes with a cost. The cost is they're going to fight against big corporate donations. I call them corporate Democrats, the term I use for most of these centrists, corporate Democrats, because they are bought and paid for by corporations. Not an exaggeration. It's not inflammatory language. It's accurate language. Plain and simple. When you are funded more by corporations than small dollar donations, you're a corporate Democrat. If you're a Democrat, you are a corporate politician. You will represent the interests of the corporation above the people. Why? Because it makes you more likely to get reelected. Similarly, when they take donations like that, I used to receive those emails all the time from the Democratic Party, and it would look very much like, it would just be a slightly more sophisticated version of the emails Donald Trump would send out. Donald Trump would send out an email talking about a lie. He would say, there's an army of Mexicans coming over the border. Got to build a wall. Donate. He would then take the donations and not do anything of substance, yada, yada, yada. Democrats would tell you about a real problem. Republicans are coming to get rid of abortion. Yes, they are. Yes, they did. And they would take donations. But then they do the same thing Trump would do. When it came down to actual action, indiscernible. They may as well have made up the issues they were talking about. They may as well have said, "Do you own a kitten? Well, Republicans are going to try to cook and eat it." For the action they took, they may as well have. It makes it look like we're lying about the issues that we're talking about. It makes it look like we're exaggerating what a big deal it is when they don't, support people coming up who are saying that's what they want to fight against versus, I keep trying to call this guy Ruben Gallego. It's Cuellar. It's not Gallego. But when they're up against Cuellar, who is an anti-abortion guy that is somehow allowed to call himself Democrat, no, he takes corporate money. That's the guy they support, and it makes them look disingenuous. It makes it look like they were lying the whole time about a belief that abortion is a right. The public who doesn't follow this closely, it's understandable that they would come to that conclusion. When they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they did not make abortion a fundamental right that could not be revoked. They didn't write it into a national law. So we are left then with parties that on the surface look very similar. And it's depressing.
Cannot be lost. America, Come on now, we got to do something about this and not continue to be complicit in our own demise. This stuff is just absolutely, it makes you shake your head really hard.
If I could say one last thing too,
Sure.
To me, this is all within the context of the Democratic National Committee deciding to move South Carolina up ahead when they could have chosen more diverse states like Nevada or Michigan, like states where someone other than Jim Clyburn basically puts their thumb on the scales for whoever wins. But like, of
South
course, the
Carolina
Iowa,
killed me
New
in
Hampshire
2020.
primaries. I was a producer at TYT during those primaries. It was a mess. It was a ridiculous situation. You had
I was there.
You had one of Buttigieg's companies somehow involved in the Iowa results. It was a big mess. We don't want to go back to that system, but okay, if we're talking about replacing systems, the Democratic National Committee is clearly down to make changes for what it feels like, what they feel like will yield better results for better candidates. But of course, what they think are better candidates is very out of tune with what the grassroots thinks. And every time you get warriors like you going to these state meetings and whole Democratic National Committee meetings, the same thing happens. You're just brushed aside as if you're the college students touring for the first time trying to get selfies with all the politicians. Like, it's ridiculous, and it's indicative of efforts that need to be had inside the Democratic Party, but also efforts that need to happen outside of the Democratic Party to pressure them and show them that there is no other choice but listening to the grassroots activists.
Ultimately, it's coming down to that, and that's why the majority of the voters don't subscribe to either one of these parties, Dan. They tired of the foolishness and the okey doke. They see right through it, but especially younger voters.
I mean, no notes. Completely correct. There is something you can do about this. It's pretty straightforward. As a matter of fact, it ain't an easy fight, but it is a necessary fight to take up. Getting big money out of politics. Great news on the difficulty, I suppose. There's already an organization working on this. We don't have to form one. We don't have to do the lion's share of the tedious work. That's the organization. Citizens, Christ. I used to work with a weatherman who would make fun of me because I would sometimes try to stand in front of his green screen and do what he did, and I never could. And he tried to teach me little tricks, and I said I will never have to do it. And here I am. Oh, Brandon, I'm sorry. That right there. Citizens take action. That's the committee. Excuse me, not the committee. That's the organization. They are working on an effort to get an amendment to our Constitution. Why an amendment? Because the Supreme Court has given a number of decisions, not just one, not just two, a number of decisions that have made it possible in various ways for wealthy people to just flood our political system with money. For example, Buckley v. Vallejo was a major one. Yep. Oh, it's up there. Citizens United, another. These allow, for example, somebody to buy, even though one person cannot give an infinite amount of money directly to a candidate, still somehow we have that law. What they can do because of these decisions, they can buy an infinite amount of campaign ads on their behalf. Or they can form a super PAC, which is just the same person putting on a different hat, and then give an infinite amount of money. Or as we saw earlier, a 501c4 can collect money from all sorts of people, then give that money to a PAC, and then give that money to a politician. These can all be run by the same person, by the way. And then that way they have laundered it properly, and in America they can bribe that politician. If we want this to stop, son of a gun, Citizens Take Action is the path to do it. Links in the description. You can, of course, take the quick route. Make your representative do the work for you. If you don't want to make phone calls, you don't want to, spend a Saturday afternoon fighting the good fight because, by God, you got a limited amount of minutes on this earth. I understand. Contact your representative. Tell them simply you want them to publicly endorse the Restore Democracy Amendment. Restore Democracy Amendment is what they are. I'm going to just get, there we go, is what they are trying to get pushed. They have named the thing. They have worked on the wording of the thing. They've done the legwork, in other words, in terms of getting together the legal approach to this. Contact your representative. Tell them you want them to publicly endorse the Restore Democracy Amendment. The reason why we want them to publicly endorse this is because we have to get momentum going. We need one person who the news cameras are obligated to cover when they say, I'm holding a press conference. We want one person to start saying, I believe in the Restore Democracy Amendment. That forces others to discuss it. That forces another news outlet to say, oh, this person's in your political clique. Do you also support the Restore Democracy Amendment? That forces the reporter to look up what that is. Getting our representatives to do this is how we generate momentum for this. If you want to be more active, if you believe in attacking this problem directly, it would feel good for your soul to be fighting these people directly, you can volunteer for Citizens Take Action. My pop, who hates being called pop, is fond of quoting that old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It does. True. Take the step. Sign up. So I was tempted. Ooh, let me boot myself out of here for a moment. I was tempted to go over the Midas Touch video that just came out. I want to tease you. I'm not going to because I haven't had enough time to look up to it. I do want to say there's a great video out by Midas Touch. It goes into a possible indictment on Trump. Seems a little bit... I've heard it before, let me just say. It seems like wishful thinking. I will be doing a video later, probably not live though, so be on the lookout for that. I'll give my thoughts on it. Well, a study was done in 2021 by the Commonwealth Fund, and the results of it are now available. Studied 11 countries that are considered high-performing countries. Let me pause for a moment. I got to get used to going in the comments. I love having a crowd now when I do these. Jumping in, Real Bill P says, cherish your pop while you have him. I lost mine in 2007. Well, I'm sorry you lost him, but I'm glad that you have good memories with him. And in a sense, that means he lives on, truly. Leonard Leo, the family, National Prayer Breakfast. Ooh, this is a man who knows what he's talking about. Supreme Court, Federalist Society, DeVos, and many others. Yeah, nailed it. And I watched it. It is definitely a black eye on Kevin McCarthy. Ooh, intriguing. All right, I'm excited for that video now. But the Commonwealth Fund did a study. 2021, results available now. It was of 11 wealthy countries and their healthcare systems. Can you guess where the United States lands? You don't even have to be held in suspense that long. You don't even have to narrow it down to one area. It's not simply bad or good. How about where did we land on access to care process, administrative efficiency, equity, healthcare outcomes? Where do you think we landed on any one of those? You could probably tell from my tone where we landed. But let's Evel Knievel this. Let's take a couple of laps around the ramp. For our assessment of healthcare, the Commonwealth Fund writes, system performance in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. We used indicators available across those 5 domains: access to healthcare, care process, administrative efficiency, equity, and, of course, the outcomes. How healthy does the population get as a result of that? Well, gosh, let's break it down one at a time. Healthcare system performance rankings. Oh, where is the U.S.? Where, oh, where? Oh, number 11, 2, 11, 11, 11. Okay, well, fair enough. Maybe our system performance just isn't good. You know, the infrastructure of the thing. How about our comparative healthcare system performance scores? As in, when we compare all these countries together under the same conditions, how do they perform? I don't even see the U.S. It must not be on there. Oh, wait. Lowest performing. Let's make this more blatant. Let's look at the raw spending efficiency of it. As in, when we purchase healthcare, how expensive is it as a comparison of our total spending on all things combined? Who spends the most? Well, let's see if I can color code it. Oh, would you look at there? I got to move my mic. Oh, no, I don't. We're at the top. U.S. spends the most. U.S. spends the most by a wide margin, and the U.S. is pulling ahead, meaning we are spending a higher percentage of our gross domestic product on healthcare, and we're doing it at a faster rate. Well, gosh, what about comparing it to how much we spend, how much the average American spends on healthcare? Oh, there's a dot there. On the left, you see healthcare system performance, as in how well it does. On the right, you see how much is spent. So the higher you are on there, the better your overall service is, the better the performance is. The farther that way it goes, the more you pay. With the lowest service and paying the most of all countries in this study, 11 countries, U.S., we lose on both counts. The pitch that Republicans keep giving us when they say that we don't want to be like the UK, like Canada, like Norway, like Germany. The pitch they keep giving us is it would be too expensive. Well, my God. It already is too expensive. And we don't get the health care. Affordability. As in, can you afford the health care of the country if you live in it? The U.S., lowest performing. Equity. As in, can you afford it if you're not rich in that country? Virtually identical for the U.S. An embarrassment. One thing I'm expecting to not hear, beginning with those of my generation and ever onward, is that America is the greatest country in the world. I just don't believe we can make that argument anymore because the facts do not bear it out. Lots of countries have freedom. We act like we have a monopoly on that. We don't. People are plenty free in Canada. People have freedom of speech in countries all around the world, not just the United States. There's a freedom of press in countries all around the world, not just the United States. What is it we have that's so great? I'll tell you what it's not. It's not healthcare. Certainly isn't healthcare. God help you if you're poor. It's not healthcare. What are the conclusions? A comparison of the features of top-performing countries and poorer-performing countries suggests that the top-performing countries rely on 4 features to attain better and more equitable health outcomes. As in, if we can stop being arrogant and we can stop saying that we are the absolute best and therefore anything we have done must be the best way to do things because we are the best, if we can acknowledge for a moment that this is us, that this is who we really are when we look at the numbers, if we can acknowledge that, and we want to change that, then there are 4 things they've identified that the top-performing countries do that the bottom-performing countries do not do. They provide for universal coverage and remove cost barriers so people can get care when they need it and in a manner that works for them. Let me just say that first part again. They provide for universal coverage. Universal coverage. It's universal health care. Medicare for all. That is what they do. They invest in primary care systems to ensure that high-value services are equitably available locally in all communities to all people, reducing risk of discrimination and unequal treatment. In other words, we have privatized healthcare right now. Businesses try to go where the money is, where they feel they will be most profitable. And so we wind up with healthcare catering to the rich, not just in terms of the services they offer, but literally where they offer them. They reduce the administrative burdens on patients and clinicians that cost them time and effort and discourage access to health care, especially for marginalized groups. Case in point, think of our abortion laws currently. Think of how much the GOP has been allowed to harass scared, traumatized, sad, young girls, or rather young people that can get pregnant. Let's not even be that specific. Think of how much they have been allowed to do that. A civilized country does not allow that to happen. They invest in social services that increase equitable access to nutrition, education, childcare, community safety, housing, which we have discussed many times on this program, transportation. Remember what I was saying about being able to cross the area you govern using public transportation. In other words, cross the land as though you are the poorest in it. And if you're unable to, then you have failed, and you must address that. And if it is a requirement that you cross it, better find a way. Because the people you're governing have to. And worker benefits that lead to a healthier population and fewer avoidable demands on health care. Don't ignore that last sentence, even though they chose to use science guy talk. I truly wish there were science communicators on every staff of scientists, because I got a double take every time I read these. It's beef I have with folks that have about 2 more degrees than I do. And fewer avoidable demands on health care. When they say avoidable demands on health care, they're just saying fewer health concerns. avoidable demands on healthcare, you got screened for cancer, which is why you got a 1-day in and out quick operation. Saw a spot, it was on your skin, we cut it out, come back in 6 months, we'll make sure nothing's there. As opposed to, this mole is discolored and oddly shaped, but my God, I can't afford to go in and get how much does a punch biopsy cost? Oh, no. I don't have $2,000 or whatever. So then it becomes cancer that metastasizes, spreads through your body, and now instead of one simple operation, you've got a so-so chance to survive it all, and it is going to take you many trips to the doctor and many complicated operations. That's an avoidable demand on healthcare. But we live in a country that equates a human being's worth to the dollar bottom line. And everybody wants to increase their own worth. Everybody wants to strive. We keep saying the American dream is money, money, money. And we keep giving people less and less money for the work that they do. Resulting in this. Resulting in an absolutely embarrassing state of American healthcare. That's our performance versus our spending. We are spending the most. We have the lowest performing healthcare system of all countries measured in this. Was it every country in the world? No. Just the top 11 richest. When I was growing up in America, if we were number 2 at anything, we attended to that right quick. Look, I still got that old school, maybe slightly problematic American pride. I don't like not being number 1. Just because I don't think America is number 1 doesn't mean I don't want to put it there. We ought to be number 1. We have the resources. We have the education. We have the ability right now. Let's make it happen. Contact your representative. What can you do? Tell them. You want Medicare for all. That simple. Bernie was right. Healthcare is a human right. And if there are 10 other countries out there wiping the floor with us, why do you think it wasn't a nice round number like 10? Why do you think it was 11? Because we wouldn't have made the list otherwise. We wouldn't have made the list. You hear that? I hope it offends you as much as it offends me. I hope it embarrasses you as much as I am embarrassed by that fact. Whole world can see that. The whole world sees how we have dropped the ball, how we have let greedy people steal from us to the point that we are literally dying for it. Unacceptable. Tell your representative, if they represent you, if they truly represent you, and if they expect your vote, they better advocate passionately for Medicare for all. I don't care what excuse they have about the House is this or the Senate's that. There is always an obstacle to overcome. We need to hold this list up. We need to shove this study in their faces, and we need to demand Medicare for all. My sons had to get, Real Bill P says, my sons had to get jobs working in healthcare to have healthcare. Good Lord, sad. Yes, it is. I'm sorry that their career decision was in any way affected by the inadequacy of America. I do hope that they are satisfied with the jobs, because I will tell you, I've met a lot of folks that work in healthcare. I got a brother-in-law that's one, as a matter of fact. There is no amount of compensation that is adequate for the work they do. So thank your sons for me. He also says the GOP states also lowered the age of consent in marriage. It makes a concerned person angry. Yeah, agreed. Voltage 80X. Love your lives, man. Keep going and getting the word out. I wish I was a good speaker. I'd do this too. Let us know how we can help. Voltage 80X, if you met me in person, I assure you, you would be convinced immediately that you can do this too. Only piece of advice I'd give is to be as precise as you can with your language, and you absolutely can. But there is definitely, on a planet with, what are we at, 8 billion people? There is definitely a crowd out there who will be interested in what you have to say. I recommend you give it a shot. Worst case scenario, you pop on the stream with your old pal Jake from time to time. We have a laugh. Well, I'm going to have a gander at that Midas Touch video. I understand it. It's real interesting. So on to the next one. Links are, of course, always in the description. I've also begun pinning these as a comment in the individual videos, so they're easy to find. But do consider contacting your representative. Remember, they are there to represent you. If it feels like you shouldn't have to do all this stuff yourself, you're right. You shouldn't have to. So make them. Put them to work. It has a massive effect when people email about this. I have already heard back positive things, working on an interview that may excite you on that particular point, but I'd rather not spoil it. Well, I have been your old pal Jake. This is WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I'll see you next time.